The Kiwi Syslog UI that you see here with the messages scrolling as they come in, this will only keep the most recent 10,000 messages. 10,000 per display buffer. You've got different buffers you could toggle. This allows you to filter different messages into different screens. But each one of those can only hold up to 10,000 messages, so it's just the most recent activity that you can see through the UI. At the same time that we're displaying here, there's another rule that sends those same messages to a text file. If we go to the rules area, I'll click on this default rule and click edit. You can see the two actions here. One is to log to that display we just looked at, and the second one is to log to a file. If we edit that action to see what it's doing, it has a relative path here, which is inside the program application directory. If you look in there, you'd see a folder named logs, and inside that folder there's a file named Syslog catchall, and this thing here is a variable that, based on this variable, it will split the file on a daily basis and also append the date to the file name. And by default, it keeps all of those daily files indefinitely. And most people like this, to have it split the file. That way it doesn't get too big to open with something like Windows Notepad, and it helps keep it organized. If you know something happened on a specific date, you know there's already a separate file just for that day. Now there's other ways to do this. If instead of using the relative path, you want to just type in the full path, that's totally fine. What I like to do is I'll go to where I want the files to be and just manually create a folder there. I'll do this one on my desktop, and I'll just call it log files, and then I'll right click and copy that path. Then I'll paste that in here, take out the quotations. So now I'm going to log to this log files folder on my desktop, and for the file name I'll say syslogs, and I like that variable that we had for the date, so I'm going to do that again. That comes from this guy here. I'll click that and date, and then the ISO date is what we had. And then for the extension, you just have to manually type that in. If you don't, it will still be the correct format, but Windows won't know what it is when you double click. It won't know what application to use to open it. So here, based on this variable, here's what our file name would look like. And you have a few options here for different formats. Perhaps maybe you'd want the CSV instead. You just have to type in CSV here. Now there's also an option here for log file rotation, to keep a certain number of files and rotate those so it doesn't get to be too much space taken up on your drive. But this only works if you're not using any variables up here. So instead of this, there's another spot I like to use, and I think it's a little better anyway, and I'll show you that in just a minute. But the way we did this, right now it's just one rule that puts all messages from all sources into just this one file. If I hit apply, we should see this new file get created in here as the new messages come in. And then that one file is going to have all the different sources, all these different addresses in this one file. So another way to do it, I'll click edit and go back to that action, the log to file action, and click edit. So instead of just this one file, I'll put another slash here, backslash, and put my cursor in between those so I have a new directory here. And then I'll click the insert function and insert IP address with the 4 octets. So now, based on this variable, it's going to create a new folder for each new address that it sees. And then inside of each one of those folders, it's still going to split it by day just for that one IP address. So I'll go ahead and hit apply, and you can see the different sources showing up now. Each new device that we hear from, we create a new folder for it, and then inside of each one of those folders, it's split by the day just for that one address. Then to organize those as far as archiving, I'm going to come back here and copy this path to make sure I'm looking in the right spot. And then I'll go to Setup and Schedules, and then Add Scheduled Task. We've got two options here: Archive, which will move the files to another directory and compress them into a zip container if you like. Then there's Cleanup, which simply deletes the files. So I'm going to do both. A lot of people will do this where I'll create one that says archive at 3 months. And then for the schedule, this is how often do we want to check to see how old the files are. So I like to work backwards here. I'm going to say once a month. And during that month, I don't want to check every day, just the first day of the month. Hours, we've already defaulted, so it's not every hour on that one day. It's just the first hour and just the first minute. So we're checking just once a month, and this is where we check. So here's where I paste what I copied. So I'm going to look in the log files directory, and I'll say include subfolders because I told it to create separate folders under this for each new address. So include subfolders. Leaving this default will find everything. So I'll say when any of those daily files gets to be at least 3 months old, then we'll capture it and we'll move it to here. I'll paste again because I want to use the same level, but instead of log files, I'll say archived log files. So we'll move it to there, and then I'll say yes, let's go ahead and put it in a zip container and compress it to make it a little smaller. So now, I should have copied while I was in there. I'll come back to where I told it to move that stuff, copy this so that I'm looking in the right spot on the next step. So the next step, I'll add a new one here, add schedule. This one will be called Cleanup, which just deletes stuff. So I'll say delete at 3 years. So we could check every minute until 3 years from now. We could check every hour. I think once a month is sufficient. If we only checked once a year, we could end up waiting a year just to find something that's 3 years old. So it could potentially end up being almost 4 years old. So I think once a month is reasonable. We'll check once a month. Again, I'll make sure it's just that first day of the month, the first hour, the first minute. And then I'll paste this. This is where we told it to move when we do that archive operation. So now we're looking at those older 3-month archives. I'll include subfolders again just to be safe, but anything that we now find here that's at least 3 years old, now we can just delete it. We've got a requirement, keep stuff for 3 years. We don't have to keep it any longer. No reason to let it keep growing. And the only option here, if we delete all of those files that have reached 3 years of age and the folder is left empty, you could delete the folder as well. In our case, it won't be empty because there's always going to be the last 3 years worth of data sitting in there. So I hit create and we're done.